Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of the Imperial survey vessel Dominion's Edge, his 4 eyes fixed on the main screen. In his 23 years of service to the Galactic Empire, he had seen many strange things. He had met 17 different alien species during first contact missions. He had watched stars being born and die, but he had never seen anything like the ship that was heading straight toward them. The vessel on the screen looked wrong. It was not sleek and curved like proper starships should be. Instead, it was boxy and angular, covered in strange metal plates and bristling with equipment that looked crude and primitive. It moved through space like a flying fortress rather than a diplomatic vessel. Most disturbing of all, it carried no identification beacon and had not responded to any of their standard greeting messages. "Sir," said Lieutenant Vexla from her position at the sensor station. Her green skin had turned pale, which happened when her species became nervous. "The energy readings from that ship are very strange. The technology appears to be primitive, maybe a few hundred years old at most, but somehow it is moving at speeds that should tear apart anything built with such basic materials." Zethkar clicked his mandibles together, a sign of deep thought among his people. How is that possible? "Run another scan." "I have run 3 scans already, sir. The results are the same each time. The ship should not be able to move that fast without better technology. It should have been destroyed by the stress forces long ago." The bridge crew watched in tense silence as the alien vessel continued to approach. It was now close enough that they could see details on its hull. Strange symbols were painted on the side, and what looked like weapons ports dotted its surface. The ship seemed to have been built for war rather than exploration or trade. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Thickmel, "I am detecting something unusual. There are organic life signs aboard that vessel, but they are unlike anything in our databases. The biological patterns are completely foreign." Zethkar had dealt with many first contact situations before. There were standard procedures to follow, rules that had been developed over thousands of years of galactic civilization. But this situation felt different. The approaching ship was not following any known diplomatic protocols. It was not even trying to communicate properly. "Continue trying to establish contact," he ordered. "Use all known languages and mathematical sequences. Surely they must understand something." For several more minutes, they broadcast greeting messages in over 300 different languages and communication methods. They sent mathematical proofs, star charts, and peaceful intentions. The alien ship continued its approach without any response. Then suddenly their communication system crackled to life. A voice came through their universal translators, but it sounded strange. The words were translated properly, but underneath the translation they could hear the original voice. It was flat and mechanical, yet somehow unmistakably organic. There was something about it that made the entire bridge crew feel uneasy. "Imperial vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. We need to talk." The bridge fell completely silent. Zethkar had expected many possible first words from an unknown species. He had hoped for peaceful greetings, feared aggressive demands, or prepared for confused questions. But he had not expected such a direct, almost casual statement. "Unknown vessel," Zethkar responded carefully. "This is Commander Zethkar of the Imperial survey vessel Dominion's Edge. We greet you in the name of the Galactic Empire. We welcome first contact with your species and hope for peaceful relations." There was a long pause before the alien voice responded. "We know about your empire, Commander. That's exactly what we need to talk about. Your people have taken something that belongs to us and we want it back." The words sent a chill through the bridge crew. First contact situations were supposed to begin with cultural exchange and careful diplomacy. They were not supposed to start with accusations of theft. Zethkar felt his training take over, even though nothing in his experience had prepared him for this exact scenario. "I am afraid there has been some misunderstanding," he said in his most diplomatic voice. "The Galactic Empire has had no previous contact with your species. We could not have taken anything from you because we did not know you existed until this moment. That's where you're wrong, Commander. Your empire has been in our territory for months now. You've taken our people from 3 different colony worlds. We want them returned immediately." Lieutenant Vexla quickly checked her sensor readings and star charts. She looked up at Zethkar with confusion in her large eyes. "Sir, the systems they are referring to are listed as uninhabited in our databases. Our survey teams reported them as hostile to life. No civilized species could survive in those environments." The alien voice seemed to have heard her comment somehow. Your survey teams were wrong. We don't just survive in those environments, we thrive in them. Those are our worlds and your people are trespassing. Zethkar felt the situation spiraling out of his control. Standard first contact procedures required careful negotiation and the involvement of diplomatic specialists. But this alien captain seemed to be demanding immediate action on matters that involved Imperial territory and policy far above his authority level. "Captain Chen," he said, trying to keep his voice calm and professional, "these matters must be discussed through proper diplomatic channels. I can arrange for you to meet with our representatives at the nearest Imperial station. There we can work together to resolve any misunderstandings." The response came back almost immediately, and there was something in the alien's voice that made Zethkar's skin crawl. It was not anger exactly, but something colder and more dangerous. "Commander, I don't think you understand the situation. We're not asking for a meeting with your diplomats. We're not requesting a peaceful negotiation. We're telling you what's going to happen. You're going to return our people and get out of our territory. The only question is whether this happens the easy way or the hard way." Before Zethkar could respond, his tactical officer spoke up with alarm in his voice. "Sir, the alien vessel is powering up weapon systems. Energy signatures are spiking across multiple points on their hull." "They're targeting us?" Zethkar asked. "No, sir. They're not targeting us specifically, but their weapons are definitely active and ready to fire. It's like they're making a statement." Captain Chen's voice came through the speakers again. "We're going to give you some time to think about our offer, Commander, but not too much time. We'll be in touch soon with specific details about what we want and when we want it. And, Commander, the next time we meet it won't be for a friendly chat." The alien ship suddenly changed course, moving away from the Imperial vessel at the same impossible speed it had approached with. Within minutes, it had disappeared from their sensors entirely, leaving the crew of the Dominion's Edge staring at empty space. Zethkar realized he was holding his breath and forced himself to breathe normally. In all his years of service, he had never encountered a species that made first contact feel like a threat, rather than an opportunity. These Terrans had managed to turn what should have been a historic moment of peaceful discovery into something that felt more like the beginning of a war. "Sir," said Lieutenant Vexla quietly, "what do we do now?" Zethkar looked at the empty space where the alien ship had been and felt a chill run through his body. "We report this to Imperial Command immediately, and we pray that whoever these humans are, they're more reasonable than they seem." Admiral Krethak had seen many strange reports in his 40 years of service to the Galactic Empire, but nothing had prepared him for the files spread across his desk. The folder marked Species Classification Human contained information that should have been impossible. According to every scientific model the Empire had developed over thousands of years, the species called humans could not exist. The data made no sense. These creatures had evolved on what the Empire classified as a Category 5 death world, a planet so hostile that no intelligent life should have been able to develop there. The planet they called Earth had crushing gravity that was nearly twice the galactic standard. Its weather systems were violent and unpredictable, with storms that could level cities and temperature changes that would kill most civilized species. The oceans were filled with deadly salt that would poison normal life forms. Worst of all, the planet was covered with aggressive predators that seemed designed to hunt and kill anything that moved. "This cannot be correct," Admiral Krethak muttered to himself as he read the report for the third time. His aide, Lieutenant Morduk, stood nearby with a worried expression on his scaled face. "Sir, I have checked the data personally. Our best scientists have verified all the information. The humans really did evolve on such a world." Admiral Krethak set down the report and rubbed his tired eyes. "But look at them, Lieutenant. They have no natural armor to protect their soft skin. They have no redundant organ systems in case of injury. They cannot see in multiple light spectrums like civilized species. They have no psychic abilities at all. They are, by every measure we use, one of the most fragile species we have ever encountered." "Yes, sir. That is what makes them so unusual." The Admiral picked up another file, this one containing intelligence about human technology and ships. What he read there made him even more confused. Human starships were crude and primitive, built like weapons rather than proper vessels for exploration or trade. They used simple chemical rockets and basic nuclear power, instead of the advanced energy systems that other species had developed. Yet somehow, with this primitive technology, humans had managed to spread across 17 different star systems in less than 100 years. Most species took thousands of years to achieve interstellar travel, and even then they usually stayed close to their homeworlds for several more centuries. How are they doing this? The Admiral asked. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their biology makes them unsuitable for space travel. They should still be struggling to survive on their home planet. Lieutenant Morduck consulted his data pad. From what we can determine, sir, they simply refuse to accept that something is impossible. When they encounter a problem that should kill them, they find a way around it. When they face an environment that should be uninhabitable, they change themselves to survive in it instead of changing the environment. Admiral Krethak stood up and walked to the large window of his office. Outside, he could see the beautiful capital world of the Empire, with its perfect climate and peaceful cities. Everything was designed for comfort and safety, as it should be for civilized beings. "Show me the colony reports," he ordered. The lieutenant activated a holographic display that showed a star map of the local region. Red dots marked human colonies, while blue dots showed Imperial settlements. What the Admiral saw made his mandibles click with agitation. The humans had established colonies in systems that the Empire had marked as completely uninhabitable. Worlds with toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures, or deadly radiation levels were now showing signs of human settlement. Some of these planets were so hostile that Imperial survey teams had refused to even land on them. "Sir," the lieutenant said quietly, "there is something else. The humans are not just surviving in these environments. According to our intelligence, their colonies are actually growing and becoming successful. That is impossible." "Yes, sir. That is what makes it so disturbing." Admiral Krethak studied the star map more carefully. The human expansion was unlike anything in Imperial history. Most species expanded slowly and carefully, choosing only the best worlds for colonization. They avoided dangerous systems and preferred to stay within safe, controlled regions of space. But the humans seemed to prefer the dangerous worlds. They were setting up colonies in places where other species feared to go. It was as if they actively sought out the most hostile environments they could find. "What do we know about their military capabilities?" the Admiral asked. Lieutenant Morduck brought up another file. "This is perhaps the most concerning information of all, sir. Human military doctrine appears to be based on the idea that any problem can be solved by applying enough violence to it. They build their weapons to cause maximum destruction with minimum resources." The holographic display showed images of human warships. Unlike the elegant artistic designs preferred by most civilized species, human ships looked like flying fortresses. They were covered in armor and bristled with weapons. Everything about their design suggested they were built for fighting rather than exploration or trade. "They use kinetic weapons, sir. Actual projectiles that rely on mass and velocity to cause damage. Most species abandoned such primitive weapons thousands of years ago in favor of energy-based systems." Admiral Krethak shook his head. "Kinetic weapons are inefficient and crude. Why would an intelligent species continue using them?" "Because they work, sir, and they are very difficult to defend against with standard Imperial shielding systems. Our shields are designed to deflect energy attacks, not physical projectiles moving at high speeds." The Admiral felt a chill run through his body. The Empire had grown comfortable over the centuries, secure in its technological superiority and advanced defensive systems. But the humans seemed to fight using methods that were so primitive they might actually be effective against modern defenses. "What does Imperial intelligence recommend?" he asked. Lieutenant Morduck consulted his data pad again. "Sir, the intelligence report suggests 3 possible courses of action. First, we could attempt to establish normal diplomatic relations and treat the humans as any other species. Second, we could try to contain their expansion by establishing a buffer zone around their territory. Third, we could take military action to eliminate what they considered to be a potential threat to Imperial stability." Admiral Krethak considered these options carefully. Diplomacy seemed reasonable, but the first contact report from Commander Zethkar suggested the humans were not interested in normal diplomatic procedures. Containment might work, but the humans had already shown they could survive in places the Empire considered uninhabitable. Military action was always an option, but the Admiral was beginning to suspect it might be more difficult than anyone expected. "What is your personal recommendation, Lieutenant?" "Sir, I believe we should be very careful with this species. Everything about them suggests they are dangerous in ways we do not fully understand. They may appear primitive and fragile, but they have already accomplished things that our best scientists said were impossible. Admiral Krethak nodded slowly. Send a message to Imperial Command. Tell them we need to study these humans more carefully before we make any major decisions. And Lieutenant? Yes, sir? Make sure our border fleets are at full readiness. Something tells me we are going to need them. The Great Council Chamber of the Galactic Empire had seen many historic moments over the past 3,000 years. It had witnessed the joining of hundreds of species into the galactic community. It had hosted peace treaties that ended wars spanning multiple star systems. It had been the site of celebrations, negotiations, and occasionally arguments between different civilizations. But Council Speaker Thisara had never seen anything like the human delegation that walked into the chamber that day. Ambassador Sarah Chen entered the room wearing what appeared to be a military dress uniform, rather than the flowing diplomatic robes preferred by most civilized species. Her clothing was dark and practical, designed for function rather than beauty. She walked with the confident stride of a soldier, rather than the careful measured steps of a trained diplomat. Even more disturbing were the two figures who followed her. They were clearly guards, and they were openly carrying weapons. Not elegant ceremonial swords or decorative energy projectors that other species sometimes brought as symbols of their culture, but actual military weapons designed to kill people quickly and efficiently. The weapons themselves were shocking to the assembled delegates. They appeared to be kinetic projectile launchers, the kind of primitive ballistic weapons that most civilized species had abandoned thousands of years ago. The fact that the humans brought such crude devices to a diplomatic meeting was either a sign of incredible ignorance or deliberate intimidation. Council Speaker Thisara felt her head fins flare with indignation as the human delegation approached the central speaking platform. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of different species watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright alarm. Ambassador Chen, the council speaker said in her most formal voice, "We welcome you to the Great Council of the Galactic Empire. We hope this meeting will mark the beginning of peaceful relations between our civilizations." Ambassador Chen stepped up to the speaking platform and looked around the chamber with cold, calculating eyes. She did not seem impressed by the magnificent architecture or the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. When she spoke, her voice was clear and direct. "Your empire has been strip mining systems we've already claimed and established colonies in. We want our people back, and we want you out of our space." The silence that followed was complete and uncomfortable. Council Speaker Thisara had expected many possible opening statements from humanity's first representative. She had prepared responses for requests for trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, or membership in various galactic organizations. She had not expected an immediate demand delivered like a military ultimatum. "Ambassador Chen," she replied carefully, "I believe there has been some misunderstanding. The Galactic Empire has had no previous contact with your species. The systems you refer to have been Imperial territory for over 3,000 years. They were claimed and legally registered long before your species achieved interstellar flight." Ambassador Chen's expression did not change. "Then you've been squatting there for 3,000 years. Because we're there now and we're not leaving." A ripple of shocked murmurs ran through the assembled delegates. No species had ever challenged Imperial territorial claims so directly during a first contact meeting. The very idea was unthinkable under normal diplomatic protocols. "Ambassador," Council Speaker Thisara said, her voice becoming stern, "you must understand that the Galactic Empire operates under established laws and procedures that have maintained peace for millennia. We cannot simply abandon legitimate territorial claims because a new species has decided to settle in those systems." "Why not?" Ambassador Chen asked. "You weren't using those worlds. According to our surveys, you marked them as uninhabitable and avoided them completely. We moved in, set up colonies, and started building homes. As far as we're concerned, that makes them ours." The concept was so alien to Imperial thinking that several delegates began speaking at once, their voices rising in protest and confusion. The idea that settlement could override established territorial claims went against everything the Empire had built its legal system on. Council Speaker Thisara raised her hand for silence. "Even if we accepted your unusual interpretation of territorial law, there remains the matter of your colonies being established in Imperial space without permission. This is a clear violation of galactic law." Ambassador Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. We didn't ask for permission because we didn't need it. We're not asking to join your empire or follow your laws. We're just informing you that we exist and that we want you to stay out of our territory. But you are in Imperial territory, the council speaker protested. Not anymore. The moment we planted our flags and built our cities, it became human territory. If you want to challenge that claim, you're welcome to try. But I should warn you that we take property rights very seriously. Ambassador Chen paused and looked around the chamber again. When she continued speaking, her voice carried an undertone that made several species' natural danger instincts activate. We're prepared to offer you a simple deal. Return the colonists your people took from our worlds. Pull your mining operations and survey teams out of the systems we've claimed. Do that. And we promise not to expand further into what you currently consider Imperial space. For now. The qualification at the end sent another chill through the assembled delegates. The human was not offering permanent peace, just a temporary pause in expansion. The implication was clear. If the Empire did not agree to these terms, human expansion would continue regardless of Imperial wishes. And if we refuse? Council Speaker Thisera asked, though she was not sure she wanted to hear the answer. Then we'll take back our people and secure our territory ourselves. And trust me, you really don't want that. The threat was delivered so casually that it took several seconds for its full meaning to register with the assembled delegates. A species that had been spacefaring for less than a century was threatening military action against the Galactic Empire. Council Speaker Thisara felt her diplomatic training take over. Ambassador Chen, I think you may not fully understand the situation. The Galactic Empire consists of over 400 member species and controls more than 10,000 star systems. Our military forces are vast and technologically advanced. We have maintained peace and order in this region of space for 3 millennia. Ambassador Chen nodded as if she had expected this response. I understand perfectly. You have a big empire with lots of ships and weapons. You're used to other species being impressed by that and giving you what you want without a fight. She paused and her smile became even less pleasant. But here's the thing, Council Speaker. We're not most species. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and plagues that would have wiped out any sensible species. We didn't get to where we are by being impressed by threats or backing down from fights. The chamber fell silent again. Several delegates were beginning to look genuinely worried. We came here today to make you a reasonable offer, Ambassador Chen continued. Return our people and get out of our space and we'll leave you alone. But if you decide you want to do this the hard way, that's fine with us too. We've been preparing for that possibility since the day we met your first survey ship. Council Speaker Thisara felt the situation slipping away from her completely. Normal diplomatic protocols were useless against someone who seemed to view negotiation as just another form of warfare. Ambassador, surely we can reach some compromise that benefits both our civilizations. We just offered you a compromise. You get to keep the rest of your empire, and we get to keep our colonies. That's pretty generous considering we could just take what we want and not bother asking. The casual arrogance of the statement left several delegates speechless. Ambassador Chen looked around the chamber one more time, then nodded to her guards. We'll give you 7 standard days to consider our offer. After that, we start solving this problem our way. We'll be in touch. The human delegation turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a room full of shocked and confused representatives. Council Speaker Thisara realized she was trembling slightly and forced herself to remain calm. She had just witnessed the most unusual diplomatic meeting in the history of the Galactic Empire, and she had a terrible feeling that it was about to get much worse. Admiral Vexthon had commanded Imperial fleets for over 30 years. He had participated in 12 different military campaigns and had never lost a single engagement. His task force consisted of 50 of the Empire's most advanced warships, equipped with weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been penetrated by enemy fire. As he looked at the tactical display showing the human colony of New Texas, he felt confident that this would be the quickest military action of his career. Intelligence reports indicated the colony was defended by maybe 6 primitive human vessels and a few thousand ground troops. His fleet alone carried more firepower than most planetary defense systems. Sir, reported Captain Zixtel from the communications station, we are receiving a transmission from the human colony. Put it through, Admiral Vexthon ordered. He expected to hear a surrender offer or at least a request for negotiations. What he heard instead made him question whether the universal translator was working properly. Imperial Fleet. This is Colonel Martinez of the New Texas Colonial Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to turn around and leave our system before we open fire. Admiral Vexthon looked around his bridge in amazement. Several of his officers were making gestures that in their cultures indicated extreme confusion or disbelief. Colonel Martinez, the Admiral responded. This is Admiral Vexthon of the Imperial Navy. You are vastly outnumbered and outgunned. I strongly advise you to surrender immediately to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. The human's response came back immediately. Admiral, you've got 50 ships and we've got 6. That means each of my ships only has to kill about 8 of yours. Those odds work just fine for us. Before Admiral Vexthon could respond to this incredible statement, his tactical officer called out in alarm. Sir, the human vessels are moving to attack positions. They're accelerating at rates that should crush any living crew. Impossible. No biological organism can survive those acceleration forces. Sir, the humans are not just surviving them. They appear to be using them as a tactical advantage. Admiral Vexthon watched in fascination as the human ships moved in patterns that defied everything he knew about space combat. They were accelerating and changing direction so quickly that his own ship's targeting systems were having difficulty tracking them. All ships open fire, he ordered. Disable their vessels if possible, but destroy them if necessary. The Imperial fleet unleashed a barrage of energy weapons that should have vaporized the human ships instantly. But the primitive vessels seemed to dance between the energy beams, moving in ways that made no tactical sense but somehow kept them from being hit. Then the humans began their counterattack, and Admiral Vexthon realized he had made a terrible mistake. The first human ship accelerated directly toward his flagship at a significant fraction of light speed. For a moment, he thought it was going to ram them, which would be suicidal but might cause some damage. Instead, at the last possible second, it released a barrage of kinetic projectiles and veered away. The projectiles struck his ship's shields and did something that should have been impossible. They punched right through. Sir, his tactical officer reported with panic in his voice. Our shields are not designed to stop solid objects moving at those velocities. The kinetic energy is off our scale. Before Admiral Vexthon could process this information, more human ships were attacking. They moved like a pack of predators, coordinating their attacks in ways that maximized damage while minimizing their own exposure to return fire. Sir, called out his communications officer, we're receiving reports from the other ships in the fleet. The humans are using ramming attacks. Admiral Vexthon looked at his tactical display and saw something that would give him nightmares for the rest of his life. 2 human vessels had accelerated to ramming speed and were heading directly for his largest dreadnoughts. At those velocities, the collision would destroy both the human ships and their targets. They're committing suicide, he whispered. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly. I don't think they see it that way. Look at the trajectory calculations. Admiral Vexthon studied the display more carefully. The human ships were not just ramming randomly. They were targeting specific points on the Imperial vessels that would cause maximum damage while potentially allowing their own crews to survive in escape pods. But even more disturbing was what happened next. As the 2 human ships struck their targets, he realized this was not a desperate last resort. It was a carefully planned tactic. The humans had designed their ships to be effective weapons even in their destruction. The explosions that followed took out not just the targeted dreadnoughts, but damaged several other Imperial ships that were too close to the impact zone. In a matter of minutes, Admiral Vexthon had lost 4 major vessels to an enemy that was supposedly primitive and outnumbered. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the remaining human ships are regrouping for another attack. Admiral Vexthon looked at his remaining fleet and realized something that chilled him to his core. The humans were winning. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, they were actually winning this battle. All ships, fall back to defensive positions, he ordered. Prepare for... His order was interrupted by explosions throughout his ship. Somehow human forces had managed to board several of his vessels during the chaos of the space battle. Sir, reported his security chief, we have human troops on decks 7, 12, and 15. They appear to have used some kind of boarding pods that were launched during the ramming attacks. How many of them? Unknown, sir. But they're using weapons and tactics we've never encountered before. They're treating our ship like a hostile environment to be conquered rather than a vessel to be captured intact. Admiral Vexthon realized that the humans were not fighting this battle according to any civilized rules of warfare. They were not trying to minimize casualties or preserve valuable equipment. They were fighting as if the only acceptable outcome was the complete destruction of their enemies. Reports continued to pour in from across his fleet. Human boarding parties were using explosive devices that damaged their own troops as much as Imperial forces. They were fighting in sections of ships that had lost life support, apparently unconcerned about environmental dangers that would kill most species. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "I'm receiving a transmission from the human colonel." "Put him through." Colonel Martinez's voice came through the speakers, and Admiral Vexthon could hear weapons fire and explosions in the background. "Admiral, I want you to know this isn't personal, but you came into our system threatening our people. That was a mistake. Colonel, surely we can reach some agreement. This level of destruction benefits no one." "See, that's where you're wrong, Admiral. This destruction benefits us quite a bit. Every ship of yours we wreck is one less ship threatening our colonies. Every Imperial sailor who goes home scared is one less sailor willing to attack human settlements." Admiral Vexthon felt his worldview crumbling. "You're willing to sacrifice your own people just to send a message? Admiral, you still don't get it. We're not sacrificing anybody. We're investing in our future. Every human who dies fighting you today is saving the lives of 10 humans who won't have to fight you tomorrow." The connection ended, and Admiral Vexthon stared at his tactical display. His fleet, which had started the day with 50 ships, was down to 37 functional vessels. The human force, which had started with 6 ships, still had 3, operational, plus unknown numbers of boarding parties causing havoc throughout his remaining fleet. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "what are your orders?" Admiral Vexthon looked at the display for a long moment. He thought about his 30 years of service, his perfect record, and the reports he would have to write about this disaster. "Signal general retreat," he ordered. "All ships withdraw from the system immediately." "Sir, are you sure? We still have significant numerical superiority." Admiral Vexthon thought about Colonel Martinez's words and the casual way the humans had treated their own deaths as tactical investments. "No," he said quietly. "We don't have superiority. We never did. These humans fight like they're trying to teach the universe a lesson about the price of threatening them, and I'm not sure our civilization is ready for that kind of education." Emperor Calthazad stood in his private chambers, looking out at the vast city that stretched to the horizon below his palace. For 3,000 years, his family had ruled the Galactic Empire, maintaining peace and order across hundreds of worlds and dozens of species. He had never expected to be the emperor who would have to sign a treaty with a species that had been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. The document on his desk was unlike any treaty in Imperial history. It was not a surrender by a defeated enemy or a negotiated settlement between equals. It was essentially a list of demands from a species that had somehow fought the mighty Imperial Navy to a standstill in just 18 months of warfare. His aide, Chancellor Morvek, stood nearby with an expression of barely concealed distress on his scaled features. "Your Majesty, are you certain this is the correct course of action? The military council believes we can still achieve victory if we commit more resources to the campaign." Emperor Calthazad did not take his eyes off the city below. "Chancellor, in the past 18 months we have lost over 200 warships to a species that started this conflict with maybe 50 vessels total. Our casualty reports are classified, but I suspect they make for very disturbing reading." "Yes, Your Majesty, but our economy is beginning to feel the strain of this war. Our citizens are asking questions about why we are fighting these humans in the first place. And most importantly, the humans show no signs of giving up or running out of resources." The Emperor turned away from the window and walked to his desk. The treaty document seemed to mock him with its simple, direct language. There were no flowery diplomatic phrases or complex legal terminology. It read more like a business contract than a formal agreement between interstellar powers. "What do our intelligence services tell us about human capabilities?" the Emperor asked. Chancellor Moravec consulted his datapad. Your Majesty, the reports are disturbing. The humans appear to be using the war as a training exercise for their military forces. They are developing new weapons and tactics at an unprecedented rate. Some of our analysts believe they are actually becoming stronger as the conflict continues. And their expansion. They have established 17 new colonies since the war began, Your Majesty. All in systems we had classified as uninhabitable or too dangerous for settlement. Emperor Kalthazad sat down at his desk and picked up the treaty document. The terms were harsh but not unreasonable. The Empire would recognize human territorial claims in the systems they had already colonized. In exchange, the humans would agree to formal diplomatic relations and would not expand into core imperial territory. What made the treaty unprecedented was not what it said, but what it represented. For the first time in imperial history, the Empire was being forced to acknowledge that there were limits to its power and authority. Your Majesty, Chancellor Moravec said carefully, there is one more matter. The human ambassador is waiting in the throne room. She has requested a private audience before the signing ceremony. The Emperor nodded. Send her in. A few minutes later, Ambassador Sarah Chen entered the chamber. She had traded her military uniform for more formal diplomatic attire, but she still carried herself like a soldier. Her eyes swept the room, taking in the defensive positions and potential exits in a way that made the Emperor's guards nervous. Your Majesty, she said, with a slight bow that was respectful but not subservient. Ambassador Chen, I trust you find the treaty terms acceptable? They're a good start, she replied. But I wanted to talk to you about what happens next. Emperor Kalthazad gestured to a chair, but Ambassador Chen remained standing. I am listening. Your empire has existed for 3,000 years, she said. You've built something impressive here. Hundreds of species living in relative peace, trade flowing freely between star systems, scientific advancement, cultural exchange. It's really quite remarkable. I sense a but coming. Ambassador Chen smiled, and the Emperor was relieved to see it looked genuine rather than predatory. But your empire has grown comfortable. You've forgotten what it's like to face a real challenge. You've been dealing with species that either joined willingly or were easily conquered. And you believe this is a problem? I think it's made you soft. Look at what happened during our war. Your military commanders expected us to follow standard tactical doctrines. Your diplomats thought we would be impressed by threats and intimidated by superior numbers. Your intelligence services believed we would eventually surrender when the cost became too high. The Emperor considered her words. And instead? Instead, you discovered that there are species out there who don't play by your rules, who don't share your assumptions about acceptable cost and reasonable behavior, who might be willing to do things that seem crazy to you but make perfect sense to us. Ambassador Chen paused and looked out the window at the peaceful city below. Your Majesty, this war was just the beginning. There are probably dozens of species out there that you haven't encountered yet. Some of them might be even more difficult to deal with than we are. Are you threatening us, Ambassador? No, Your Majesty. I'm trying to help you. Humans don't want to destroy your empire. We actually admire what you've built here. But we do want to make sure you remember that the galaxy is a big, dangerous place full of surprises. Emperor Kalthazad felt a chill run through him. What are you suggesting? Trade with us. Learn from us. Let us teach your military forces how to fight against enemies who don't follow civilized rules of warfare. In exchange, you can teach us about large-scale administration and long-term peaceful development. The idea was so unexpected that the Emperor needed a moment to process it. You want to form an alliance? Not exactly an alliance. More like a partnership between civilizations that have different strengths and different perspectives on how the galaxy works. Ambassador Chen moved closer to the desk. Your Majesty, your empire is very good at maintaining peace and stability once it's established. But you've forgotten how to deal with chaos and conflict when they arise. We're very good at surviving chaos and winning conflicts, but we're not very good at the peaceful administration stuff that comes afterward. You believe we could benefit each other? I think we could learn from each other. And I think both our civilizations would be stronger for it. Emperor Kalthazad looked at the treaty document again. What had seemed like a humiliating surrender suddenly looked more like the beginning of a new kind of relationship. There is one condition, he said finally. What's that? Your people must agree to follow certain basic laws and customs when operating in imperial space. We cannot have human colonies treating our territory like the wild frontier regions where anything goes. Ambassador Chen nodded. That's reasonable. As long as your people understand that human colonies are going to do things differently than imperial colonies. We're not going to change our basic nature just to make you more comfortable. I would not expect you to. The Emperor stood up and walked to a cabinet containing his official seal. The decision he was about to make would change the course of galactic history, but somehow it felt right. Ambassador, I believe we have the foundation for a very interesting future. Years later, historians would mark the signing of the Treaty of New Geneva as the moment when the Galactic Empire evolved from a traditional imperial power into something new and unprecedented. The empire remained vast and powerful, but it was no longer alone at the top of the galactic hierarchy. Human colonies continued to spread into the dangerous regions of space that other species avoided. Human merchants began appearing in imperial markets, bringing goods and technologies that no one had seen before. Human military advisors worked with imperial forces to develop new strategies for dealing with unconventional threats. The partnership was not always easy. Humans and Imperials had very different ideas about acceptable risk, proper procedure, and reasonable behavior. But both civilizations learned and grew from the experience. Most importantly, the galaxy itself became a more interesting and dynamic place. The age of imperial dominance was over, but the age of cooperation and mutual challenge had begun. Commander Zethkar, now retired and teaching xenodiplomacy at the Imperial Academy, would often tell his students about the day that changed everything. The most dangerous phrase in the galaxy, he would say, isn't "we come in peace or surrender or die." It's "we're here now, and we're not leaving." Because when a species says that and really means it, the entire balance of power can shift overnight. The Empire endured, adapted, and eventually thrived alongside its newest and most challenging partners. But in the halls of power throughout the galaxy, there was a new understanding that strength came not just from advanced technology or superior numbers, but from the willingness to do whatever it took to protect what mattered most. And in the dangerous regions of space where no sane species would choose to live, human colonies continued to grow and prosper, sending a clear message to the galaxy. There would always be someone crazy enough to thrive where others feared to go.